Hi guys, I meant to get this up by Monday, but as you could probably tell, or will be able to tell, I've come down with a little bit of something. So I'm sorry that this is on Tuesday, but hopefully it's still helpful for you guys as you're going through the week. I definitely want to come back. This is where the class splits and we start to talk about major world religions as we're talking about certain philosophical ideas. You guys have a great reading this week from Smith, who this book is, more or less the book that every introduction to religious studies class is using because it has such a comprehensive yet very accessible basic understanding of all the major religions in the world. So hopefully you enjoyed that Hinduism reading. If you want to bring some of that into your academic discussion, that's great. If you feel like you don't have enough on the philosophical logic readings, that's completely fine. I understand. But I would absolutely love it if we could discuss some of the thoughts that you guys really enjoyed, or some of the things that you didn't understand, or some of the issues that you had from the Hinduism reading in your reflection discussions. I think that would be super interesting to hear your guys' take on that. I realized last week's video may have been a little bit too long, so I'm going to try to make it a little bit more concise this week. So basically, you start off, you've got William Craig and J.P. Moreland this week. They kind of take an interesting road in that they don't use any other church fathers. They use the cosmological arguments from Hinduism. The cosmological arguments from Islam. They are both modern. They founded a reasonable faith organization that's really interesting. If you guys thought this reading was great, you might want to check out their website. So they go into these two Arabic philosophers that would probably be to Islam what, say, Aquinas and Augustine are to Christianity. So Al-Ghazi and Al-Kindi, they're more or less, their writings are all over the board. They talk about math, they talk about physics, they talk about, how to build an argument. These two authors are talking about everything, but the one that they both kind of agree on and go into is the cosmological argument, which more or less it's that three-pronged piece from your text. And what Craig and Moreland do with this is they basically talk about the universe having a beginning, and that it happens probably at a finite moment, but then it goes in infinity in either directions. So basically what they're saying is there's nothing that we know of that doesn't have a beginning, even the universe, but something can have a beginning and then it can expand in either direction on a timeline to infinity, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's helpful, because that was a little bit confusing. Their argument basically is something can't come out of nothing. There must be a transcendent cause. So when they say transcendent cause, they're basically saying that there must be a creator. There must be something more than the universe that is the transcendent cause that creates the universe. Potential can't actualize itself. It needs an external cause. Again, that's pointing to God. Basically, for something to exist, it needs a cause. We know the universe exists, so the universe needs a cause. So that's the train of thought or logic that sort of postulates this argument. Okay, so then you get into Draper, and he is critiquing this cosmological argument. He's a modern author. His focus is mainly on evil. He basically starts his career with the idea that natural selection is pretty cruel, and for natural selection to be real, he doesn't believe that there can be an all-powerful God. So basically, what his stance is that there's so much cruelty in the world by this natural design that it's hard to accept an omnipotent God. Where he really goes into criticizing Craig and Moreland, because this is a direct critique of their work, is in the begins to exist. So he says that their philosophy more or less holds up if you agree that the universe at one time begins to exist. So he says if something's infinite, it is infinite. So there can be something infinite, but what he's saying is that for something to have a beginning and then be infinite, it would just have to have no end in sight. So that's sort of the definition of infinite that he's working with. But he rejects that that the universe begins to exist. He says you can't believe in an infinite universe, and also postulates the argument that something begins to exist. So he argues that the universe is a closed system, which means that there's only so much energy. Energy can't forever be expanding, thus it can't really be infinite. He doesn't put up any notion of his own. He just critiques these previous ideas. So that's what you have there. Your next author, this is the crux of your discussion question this week. Probably some of you have heard of this before, the watchmaker theory. It's very common in pop culture. But the introduction to this in our book was very helpful, I thought, kind of outlining everything. But when you actually read Paley, at least he's pretty easy to read. He makes the theological argument for the existence of God. He is from the 1800s, so he is sort of a founder of natural theology. He's an Englishman. One thing that the book points out, and then so did our notes for this week, point out that he doesn't use Hume, and Hume becomes one of the most famous philosophers, theologians, thinkers of his time. So it's really odd that he didn't use Hume. So basically, Paley makes the argument, that there's an intelligent purpose, there's an order, there's a mark of design, so that if you were just looking at the world, it would make sense. It wouldn't fit together so well, and things wouldn't work the way that they do if someone didn't design that to happen. Basically, he says, you don't need to see it being made to tell that something's made, so you don't need to see the person making a watch to be able to tell that there was a lot of thought that went into how that watch was going to work. And you don't need to understand all of the parts. And actually, he sort of argues that there's no way we can't even understand all the parts, but you just have to have observable parts and be able to tell that those parts fit together in such a way that someone planned them to be fitting together. Okay, so then we get to Hume. So, like I said, this author that you're reading is one of the most often cited people, philosophers, thinkers in academia. So Hume writes a ton, but this particular writing, he's critiquing the design argument. So this reading I thought was confusing but interesting. Again, I think it's important to remember that at the time that he's writing this, so he's writing this in the 1700s, at the time that he's writing this style is something that everyone would be able to read. This is more or less how, so a lot of thinkers, since the church was in control of society, what a lot of thinkers did is they would make arguments, but say that, I'm recapping an argument from these three people, and this person says this, and this person says this, so that if they were saying something heretical, it wouldn't be directly credited to them. Because Hume loses out on a ton of job opportunities, he loses a lot of respect within society for being too atheistic. So that's one reason why a lot of thinkers did this, where they have people argue. Another reason is just at the time people expected that. That's how, to a lesser extent, Aquinas wrote, a lot of the philosophers wrote it. People were used to reading thinking that was this way, and although it's hard for us, it was probably it was normal for them. So he's using 3 probably not real characters. I don't think that anyone is making the argument that this is the actual Philo that he's trying to speak on behalf of. Most people would say that the Philo character is probably closest to his beliefs, to Hume's personal beliefs. And, Philo is basically representing that human reason is inadequate. You can't really use reason or observation to understand. You've got your arguments in this work that God can be seen in the human mind, and the reflection of the world or the universe being so similar or being so easily understandable to the human mind is a reflection that God is probably a similar creator, and kind of leans on the argument that we're created in God's image. And then you have your other defense is sort of creationism is self-evident, like kind of the watchmaker design. Creationism is self-evident with just simple observation. So all we need to really be doing is observing. So that is an older piece, but one that is often cited. It's used by many people. I don't think it's an incredibly strong work, but I think it's great that you guys would be familiar with it, because a lot of people use it for different things. Okay, so then we've got Collins. Collins is a modern author. Collins is a scientific author. And he presents the scientific argument for the existence of God. This article, if you are making any sort of a hard and fast claim, this is probably the best, most academic article in the book. He's talking about fine-tuning and sort of the laws of natural laws, and basically he is showing that there's no way that just by happenstance all of these things come together to make the world hospitable for humans, or for consciousness, maybe to be more inclusive. So he's basically, he goes through and he gives, these tons of crazy stats, like, one of them had to do with the bullet being fired from, light years away and hitting a target. These things that are saying, mathematically this is the statistical equivalent of us just chancing into a hospitable world. He also makes a really good argument that so we see in the law of thermodynamics that things get increasingly more muddled or chaotic, and that actually sort of follows almost like the notion of evolution, so that we start out with order and then things devolve or decay or increase in chaos. And so what Collins says is, we know that to be true, and everybody is agreeing that that's true. My question is, where then does the initial order come from? So if we kind of decay into this very hospitable climate by chance, who put that initial order there to make the world make sense? Sorry, hold on one second, guys. Okay, sorry for that interruption. So Collins puts out a theory here, or, an argument here that's incredibly sound. It's very mathematically sound, and it's very scientific. So I think a lot of people genuinely enjoy this, and I think I hope that you guys enjoyed this, especially because we have so many people that feel so much more comfortable with the theist ideas. This is probably the strongest defense that I've ever read for a theistic worldview. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed this. Hopefully you found a lot of really fascinating stuff and stuff that you can cite in the future, stuff that you can cite throughout this class. Feel free to always revisit these readings. The other main thing that I just wanted to go through, make sure if the Hinduism reading is getting difficult for you guys or you're having a hard time, feel free to just sort of go through the title heads, so the subheadings, because that's going to get you to at least a good reading. So at least hit these and see if you can make sense of, with a skimming of each subheading, so that you kind of have an idea of what we're talking about when it comes to Hinduism. I'm going to take a look and see if I can find some of like the cultural aspects of the Hinduism religion so that I could hand them out to you guys in class, because I noticed that everyone, or at least 5 or 6 of you, so half of the class, has said that what you're hoping for is to have positive interactions with people and, be respectful to patients. And I'm going to see if I can find something that like specifically speaks to Hinduism and the best, safest, most respectful cultural interactions to give to you guys. But this reading is very, very good for understanding. I think my favorite part of the reading is the notion of the mountain, and how when we're just sort of trying to convert or understand or debate religion, we're circling the bottom of the mountain and we're not climbing to the top. And the climbing to the top comes from, digging into a religion and, really trying to know the nature of God. That's how you get closer to the top of the mountain being God. I think that if nothing else, that's a really nice metaphor for some of the things that we're doing in class, trying to really dig into, what's the nature of God, what's the nature of evil. Some of these things are very interesting. I feel like they mirror that notion of the Hindu mountain. So, pull out some of your favorite parts, put your questions. If anyone comes up with any questions about Hinduism, please shoot me an email or put it in the forum. We can have some really good discussion on this religion. It's one of the oldest world religions. It's the 3rd biggest. So this is one that you guys may come across. And also, these beliefs are very similar to a lot of sort of modern beliefs or humanist or, like skeptical humanists. A lot of them take some of these Hindu ideas. So understanding Hinduism is a really, really strong place to start. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Like I said, I wanted to keep it a little bit shorter this week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I know that some of these readings were really hard, but I hope that Robin Collins was able to sum a lot of the readings up for you. And give you, some really strong jumping off points for your discussion. So have a good week. Please reach out to me if you guys think of anything at all that would be helpful or that I could do. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the forum. All right. Talk to you soon.